Okay,
Yeah.
did I need to leave at 5? I just
Yeah,
have
I'm gonna get you out in an hour.
okay, great. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just
Um,
have this phone call that I need to do. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome back to So Bad It's Good, presented by Betches Media. Today, I am so excited to have our next guest. She was on like years ago, and I've got to pick my battles on when to ask her. And she just wrote this fantastic article, this amazing story about visiting all of the Vanderpump Extended Universe restaurants. She's a staff writer for The New Yorker and a host of the excellent podcast, The New Yorker's Critics at Large, which just had this amazing episode breaking down the summer of the pop star princess, from Charlie XCX to Chappell Roan to Sabrina Carpenter and Katy Perry. I'm a huge fan of her writing and her social media presence, and nothing comforts me more than when she'll post that she's watching some sort of reality television on her projector. Her writing is so sharp, colorful, and funny. Who else can compare The Valley to a Richard Yates novel? She's here to talk about her article, The Surreal Simulations of a Reality TV Restaurant Empire, where she visited all those Vanderpump restaurants. The one, the only, Naomi Freier. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm excited to be back. Thank you for having me.
No, my gosh, I wish I could have you every week. And by the way, I really was listening to your podcast, and now it's kind of an essential listen. I mean, I really highly recommend, if you want pop culture talk and there's so much you guys, the three of you, have talked about in such a way that it really makes you feel like, I'm like, wow, I'm really learning something here.
I'm so glad you feel that way. Yeah, it's so Critics at Large, just for listeners who aren't familiar, it's me and it's my co-hosts who are also, like myself, staff writers at The New Yorker, Vincent Cunningham and Alex Schwartz. And it's once a week. It airs on Thursdays. It drops, as they say, 6 a.m. every Thursday. And yeah, we've been doing it for almost a year now. And yeah, I guess our goal is to kind of talk about culture in a way that's accessible, but also, as you say, Ryan, helps kind of teach us something, or think about things, at least. Not teach, I wouldn't say teach, but
no, I think think about things is the right, it's like I'm always looking for people that can actually give credence why we love these things and almost help explain why we shouldn't be ashamed of these things and why it is an important piece of our culture. Like the way you were talking about, like Charlie XCX and Chappell Roan and her project, comparing it to Katy Perry and the feminism angle and the anti-feminism angle. I thought it really provided so much context for this summer. And I thought it was so brilliant too, when you guys were talking, where it could have been the summer of the Drake Kendrick beef, and the pop princesses kind of took over completely, and I'm really happy about that.
Right. We're kind of now, I mean, we did talk on the podcast a couple months ago about Drake and Kendrick. So that was certainly something, and we talked about beefs in general, I guess. So it was certainly something that happened and did define the summer in some ways. But I think that the pop princess thing, I mean, I should say that this particular episode that you're referring to, we had some special summer fun, like one-on-one episodes that aired with each of us co-hosts doing a one-on-one with a different New Yorker staff writer. And I talked to Kalifasane Kay, who's mostly a pop music critic for The New Yorker. And yeah, I just loved it. Actually wasn't my initial idea to do it. Our producer, Rhiannon Corby, who's really brilliant and helps us, figure out what we're talking about every week, was like, Naomi, why don't you talk to Kay about the summer of the pop princess? And I was like, the pop girly, I guess she said. And I was like, oh, wait, yeah, that's such a good idea. And when we started talking about it, I was like, yeah, something is happening here. And there are all these variations on a theme, right? Where like each of these women is her own thing and has her own particular characteristics that can help us think about like what's going on right now with women, know, and like, and, kind of our attitudes towards feminism and just generally like, towards politics, the whole Kamala angle with Brat and so
Yeah.
on.
I mean, they immediately
So
jumped on the brat trend, and
I
everybody was like,
know.
does Kamala know who Charlie XCX is? How exciting is this? Or did somebody have to explain Charlie XCX
I
to
know, like
Kamala?
who was the first person, which staffer, was the
May
one
I
who
have a
was,
word, Kamala? Can I
yeah.
pull you? Can I pull
It's
you for
like,
a
so
chat?
so let me explain. Let me explain what's going on here and what it means. Yeah,
Yeah,
but they
it's
really
great. So,
jumped on that bandwagon, the Harris Waltz campaign,
yeah.
and good for them, and I just hope we can keep this going without teetering over the edge of cringe until like November.
Well, I mean,
You know?
but that seems to be, we have such a short shelf life on pop culture these days and how
Right.
it relates to the world.
So I
And
hope
they really,
what
yeah,
I'm saying is I hope it can become relevant and beneficial to the campaign for long enough to carry us towards the actual election before somehow it turns dark and like a
yeah,
bad
before
thing,
Armageddon happens with our
Yeah.
pop princesses and stuff. I mean, that's the scary thing about pop culture because it's all consuming now. And I relate everything to reality television and more specifically Vanderpump Rules.
I
Like,
mean, it's yeah, that's like what could be more forever relevant to us,
yeah.
Ryan?
Well, think about, Naomi, think about this show has been on since 2013. And like you said,
Incredible.
like things burn out so quickly now for this to have the longevity and then to be able to launch a new series, The Valley. And then on top of that, there's all the second screen technology where we could create a show just by their social media posts where we could do a
Totally.
voiceover underneath it.
Yeah, like
It's all,
off season stuff.
yes,
So much is
it's all
happening.
consuming.
It's all consuming. And, I sometimes think about it. I'm like, can you believe we still had like a pretty, fair amount of time of Obama's second term still when the show began airing. Like, this is how long it was. We were still in the thick of the Obama years. And so much has happened since.
Yeah.
But I do, what you were talking about with kind of like how quickly things change in pop culture and how things, go from so bad it's good, from bad to
Yeah.
good, from good to bad. And Kay was making this point in the podcast that we were referring to, how like now Katy Perry is down, maybe she'll be up by November.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll have another single where she'll get it exactly right rather than exactly wrong, and suddenly she will be defining our moment. Who can tell? Maybe
Yes.
Charlie will go down. Like, it's the stakes are like so ever changing. And the thing about Vanderpump, which does make it, I think, pretty exceptional, and part of the reason why maybe people like you and me and, many other people continue to be interested in it, is that it's a constant. Like, it's been over 10 years now, which is like a lifetime.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I can't, obviously we've had franchises, we've had like Real Housewives of the OC since like 2006. I feel like, obviously
Over 18 years now. Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And kids, I remember like interviewing Andy, and he was like, I watched these, essentially said something to the effect of, I watched these children grow up. Like, you see like Vicky's kids or whatever going from like, I mean, they're now like 72 years old, and they were like 12 when the show started. Like, it's a lifetime. But I feel like these shows had, of course, there are the mainstays, but they did have kind of a lot of personnel. The Real Housewives have, for the most part, a lot of kind of personnel switching up, to keep it fresh. And Vanderpump, of course, there's new people that get added, some people leave. But in general, I mean, we've had Sandoval, we've had some of these characters for so long. And now with
Which, by the way, in the article, Naomi describes a young Tom Sandoval as a shifty-eyed bartender, which I love. I was like, how did that just come to you? Or were you like, how do I describe Tom? And then I've been watching the first season again, and I was like, he kind of is shifty-eyed.
Well, I'll tell you the thing with Sandoval, one of the things, there are many things about Sandoval, but one of the things about him is, I don't know if you've noticed, and I've talked about this with my daughter, who's also was like a mere 2 years old when the show started and is now 13 and has watched with me now. And
I was gonna ask because your daughter's into all this cool music, like Bikini Kill, all this stuff. Like, does she think it's cringe Vanderpump Rules, or does
No,
she
she
kind
likes
of
it.
enjoy
I
it?
mean, she
Good.
she has said, she was like, well, the Sandoval season really gripped her, and then we watched the first couple seasons together, like we went
Yeah.
back, and then she got a little bored with this most recent season, and she kind of fell off. She's looking forward to Salt Lake City now,
Yeah.
because she really likes that, and she likes Beverly Hills. So I hope once these shows come back, I'll have her back with me on the couch on, like, for, family viewings. But um, just to circle back to Sandoval and his shifty eyes, one thing that I was talking about with her is that, have you ever noticed that he never looks anyone in the eye when he talks to them? So, like, especially when there's like something that he wants to say that's a little bit kind of serious.
Yeah.
And he says it, but he doesn't, he looks a little bit to the side. I'm trying to demonstrate this to you on the Zoom. Like, and he's talking, and it's really, but it's almost like, and you're like, is it because he's lying? Is it because he's like
Yeah.
trying to avoid something? Like, is it a spectrum thing? I don't know what is going on, but
Yeah.
the shifty eyed thing really, I was like, yeah, it is. It's kind of shifty. Like, why isn't he looking people in the eye when he's one-on-one talking to them?
Yeah.
What's going
No, I
on
mean,
there?
you're right, but you actually reminded me of an experience I had with Tom one night years and years ago at the Abbey. Like, I was
Okay.
like meeting up with like Ariana and Sheena and like Logan and all these people. And I'm just nervous all the time, but I was there already nervous. And Sandoval like comes up to like hand me like a Miller Lite or something. And he's looking down and he's like, yeah, dude, my new thing is I don't want to look up because then people will meet my eyes. And then it's like they know that I'm kind of Tom Sandoval. So he was like purposely would look down because he was
Oh,
scared of
of the
not
fans, of like
of
engagement
well
with
not
people.
not like being mean, but he just said sometimes it can be a little much. So sometimes I'll just look down. Now that is not to your point at all because this was the
No, I
first
know,
season
but
before anybody knew him.
that's interesting. That's interesting, and also it's
Yeah,
people he knows. Like when he's
yeah.
engaging with like Ariana or someone, or like Katie. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I have a certain. I mean, Sandoval is clearly a complicated character, and we've been through a lot with him. But
Yeah.
I have obviously a certain sympathy for all of them. I think it's a really, obviously they're consenting adults, and they chose a certain path in life, and it comes with pluses and minuses. But I think it is a heavy load. It's a heavy
Well,
load to be known for being yourself.
oh, I mean, God, I mean, you've let the cat out of the bag. There's no mystery anymore. Like, you
Yeah.
can't be Edward Norton disappearing into a character in Primal Fear. We all know your bit, and that's
Right.
really because if that then, like you said earlier about Real Houses of Orange County, and I keep bringing up this concept lately of like, these weren't meant to go this long. Like, there's never been like a retirement home for reality stars. Like, we have to
Totally.
support these people. Like, I have to worry about Jax Taylor for the rest of my
Oh
life
my
now.
God, I'm so worried. And you know what? And I feel like I tweeted this maybe a few years ago, where I was like, I wonder like what health insurance they have. Like,
Yes.
I'm like concerned. I'm like, are they like, are they squirreling away money
No.
for a rainy day? Like,
It's
what's
worse than the
happening?
NFL players. Like, it's worse than the NFL players. They have no, and that's what I feel like somebody, if like Bethany Frankel wanted to actually do something good, like, why don't we actually get like an investment person to come talk to a cast before they start the season to just say, hey, let's put away 10% in an IRA or a money market
Yeah,
account. Because, well,
something.
Brandy Glanville now comes out with all of this. Like, it gets to a point where you have to worry about them. And
I'm
then you
so
see them,
worried about Brandy, and Brandy
right?
has gone down a really dark path, it seems, and is like
Yeah.
doing, I mean, it doesn't, the whole thing is very weird and suspicious, and I don't know, I can't speak to it because
Yeah.
I don't really know what happened, but at the same time, and as we know, these people are not necessarily the most stable people to begin with, and especially,
No, stop.
with women too. I think I especially worry maybe about, I mean, I worry about Jax, I worry about men too, but with the women, especially when they're younger, Brandy came in as like the young buck, right? She came in as like the young, poor, relatively poor friend, who is like, Lisa took her under her wing, she was a single mom. She had
And
the whole
Sheena had cheated. Sheena had cheated with her
cheated. Like, she
husband.
was married to Eddie, who was like a total
Yeah.
cheat. He cheated on her with Leanne. He left her for Leanne. And then, clearly Brandy is someone who has, she was a model, for her entire life, her younger life. She was used to trading on her looks, and that got her, and not that she doesn't have actually a really fascinating personality for reality television.
Yeah.
She's a great reality TV person, but the whole thing, and I often feel this with the women on the shows, hinges, a lot of them are like performers in some sense, come to LA to be like, yeah, like all the Vanderpump people, to be like actors or models or whatever. And then time passes, and they're like nuts often, sometimes, and
Well,
they
it
get older.
exacerbates that
It
behavior because
exacerbates
we've
it.
all celebrated that behavior. So they think, oh,
Yeah,
I'm
and
going to
they
leave.
just get,
Yeah.
it's less easy to like find some guy who's gonna like help them,
I
help take
know.
care of
Well,
them.
then Andy
And then
Cohen becomes that persona that even though he doesn't run the network, if you guys actually pay
yeah,
attention,
yeah.
he's now the figurehead. He's the Walt Disney. So everything then comes against him, which I always think, like, how does this man wake up in the morning? It's got to be so much stress.
I don't know how he does it. I mean, it's pretty impressive, because they must be texting him all day and all night, like all day and all night. And there's like dozens of them.
Oh, yeah. I was once at Watch What Happens Live, and they do like the thing where you ask questions beforehand. And I said, hey, which housewives were you texting this weekend? Who texted you? And he was like, Ramona. And then he said Kelly Dodd. And I was like, Kelly Dodd still has your number? I was like, at what point do you stop giving out your number, or you just get a burner phone or something? It's like The Wire.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's very impressive. But anyway, just to what we were, to the point you were making, I'm worried. I'm worried about Brandy. Now she has that like thing where her face blows up, some
Yeah.
autoimmune thing, and she's blaming it on the stress. And I'm just like, listen, this is we needed a financial planner like 10 years ago,
Yeah.
And
I,
and it's hard. It's hard because also the life that you lead, which is a kind of life that's like, if it's Vanderpump, it's like drinking, drugs, maybe, or just like lavish trips. It's like your life becomes this sort of whirlwind, and then like all that disposable money, and like dressing a certain way, and all of that. Then you sort of probably fritter away a lot of it, and I don't sleep at night when I think about it.
No, I mean, like Brandy is like the perfect example right now, because when she was on she was on. Like
Yeah.
she had the book deal, successful podcast,
Yeah,
celebrated on TV.
drinking and
Yes,
tweeting.
Lisa Vanderpump took her under her wing. All of this stuff was happening, and then the other side of it, where it started to become like a Boogie Nights tale, or like a studio system of the 30s, and how they would like chew up women with their contracts and just kind of burn them out, and then they would fade away. And that's the dark side of reality television, I would imagine. Of if you're depending on this for your paycheck every month, then something is wrong. Like nobody should be. I get comforted when I see Heather Dubrow, because I'm like, at least I know she has money no matter what happens.
I know, it's very calming. Dr. Terry is always going to be there, and there I hear. So a friend of mine is a photographer who shot them for a story, and I forget what it was. It was like they had a new house. I don't remember if it was like in LA or where it was. He was like,
Yeah.
These people have money. Like,
Yeah.
they are so rich. And I mean, just based on the house, it's not like they shared their financial statements with him, but and I get calmed by it. And that is partly also the reason why it's more calming to me, and less of the guilty part of the guilty pleasure is less there when I watch something like Beverly Hills, like the Beverly Hills housewives.
Yeah.
Because they seem to actually have money.
Yeah.
Most of them. And so I'm like, okay, so it's not, it's like Kathy Hilton. Nothing bad is going to happen to Kathy Hilton.
Yeah. We're set. We're set. Yeah.
She's set.
Yeah.
Kyle is fine. It's fine. So, Lisa Rinna seems to have been hustling for 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's all good. I mean, I hope.
No, me too. And I think there is something comforting when you don't have to worry about them in that way. And I think now in 2024, we're so much, and I think this is good in some ways, we're looking at everything from a more empathetic, psychological level. Mental health is very big, which I think is really so excellent in so many ways. But if you go back to 2013, when Vanderpump Rules started, I mean, this wasn't expected to be a hit. This wasn't expected to take off the way it did. And to think 11 years later, they have better houses, they have better modern day farmhouses, but everything else is very similar and shows that we only change in little centimeters instead of like miles. And that I think is the sad and the funny and the beautiful thing about those shows, and the Valley as well, which you had this great quote about the Valley. I'll find it at some point. But you said naturally a hotbed of pettiness, but it also a surprisingly bracing watch, depicting not unlike a modern day Richard Yates novel, the emptiness, despair, and self-delusion at the heart of contemporary marriage. I was like, I was like, the Valley's going to get a Pulitzer. The Valley's going to get a Pulitzer after reading that. I was like, you're right.
This season of the Valley, the first season, everyone I've met, I'm like, who sort of gravitates to reality TV, I'm like, have you watched the Valley? Right? This is like, and this was a surprise to me because I was like, is this going to be like, Jackson Brittany take Kentucky or whatever, where it's this thing where like a pig chases Jax around the haystack and like hijinks and like Meemaw is like walking in, so I was like, is this going to be one of those like spin-offs where it's like a clear cash grab and is like lame, but no, my friend. I can't wait for the next season because it's like so dark in a way and so real in like a strange, I mean, obviously like some of the people are newbies to the reality universe. Some of them are like seasoned professionals, Jax, Kristen. And now I guess like Sheena and Lala are joining apparently, according to reports.
Allegedly, they were there to pick up a little slack with Jax being away at a facility.
In rehab, right.
But I think that actually is a little false. I think they were always planning on putting them in, but they became wildly unpopular with the fan base at the end of this season. So I think Alex Baskin, the producer, was like, they might do a guest appearance or two. But I think Sheena especially is in there because she's been good friends with Janet for a long time.
I see. Okay.
Right.
No. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the Janet thing is interesting because I think the first season, I don't remember who said that, or maybe somebody said that on the show. Maybe I forget the name of her gay friend. I'm suddenly blanking.
Zach. Well, Zach. No, sorry. No, Zach is Dodie's gay friend, and she has, why am I blanking? Simon Curtis and... no.
I'm talking about Zach, actually. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I am talking about Zach with the hairline, with the extreme hairline. He, I don't remember if it was him who said this or someone else, where it was like everybody cut Janet slack this season because she was heavily pregnant, but the gloves are going to be off the next season because she was like stirring the fucking pot. And so I can't wait to see what happens.
Well, and it's also scary though, because when they have this kind of unexpected success, because like you said, nobody was expecting this to be the hit that it was.
Right.
And it's a minor hit, but there's so much room to grow. So I always wonder
so much.
with too many cooks in the kitchen, like, are they going to overdo it? Now that Janet is aware of how people potentially view her as a potential villain, is she going to try to soften, or is she going to lean in harder? There are so many things that could go wrong. And especially with adding Sheena and Lala, it brings a different flavor because Vanderpump is like a Michael Bay film a lot of the times compared to the Ice Storm vibes you get from the Valley.
It's so Ice Storm. I mean, the fact that two of the couples broke up during the season. I mean, Brittany and Jax were always going to come back and they would do it like under probably any circumstances. But Jesse and Michelle, the fact that they decided to go into this show knowing surely the state of their union is so interesting to me. Like, what an interesting choice. I wonder if it was almost like this is the
Well,
only way we're gonna divorce if we
Well, no,
could
see,
do it live.
I thought Jesse agreed to do it to save their marriage, and I think Michelle agreed to do it to end their marriage. So you had these two, that's why I think
Yeah.
it worked, because the moment they hit a scene together, there was this coldness. It felt like when Darth Vader entered a room in Star
Oh
Wars,
my
where you're
God.
like, holy shit. And then just to have that scene where he goes off and does ayahuasca and he comes back and he's like, I'm all better. I'm a
Yeah.
different guy.
I'm a
Different
different
guy.
guy.
And I was like, that's so Vanderpump, because you then harken back to all this rich history we have of Reiki with Jax and of scream therapy with Tom Sandoval, where he's like screaming, like, he's like, what's up, Lala? I was just doing scream therapy. Come on in. Like, that's insane.
Remember when Jax would tell his Reiki healer, I love you, when they would like say bye? He would be like, love you. I'm like, what?
It really, I mean, it's such a great show, because all these moments that you like remember back and you almost start cry laughing. And I will say, just like it's had its moments where it wasn't good, seasons like 8 and 9, and to be able to pick back up the way they are, that's really weird. Because now I thought, well, how long do we keep going? And I will, to bring it back to your article a little bit, where you did come to Los Angeles and you visited every Vanderpump themed restaurant like Rainforest Cafe. How do you pitch this to the New Yorker? Like, because I know you love this.
How this happened. I'll tell you exactly how this happened. So I was for my daughter's spring break, we went to Stockholm because my husband is an artist and he had a show at a gallery there. It just actually happened to align with the break, so we all went. And I think we were there for like 5 days or something. And I had the first couple of days really bad jet lag. And it was like 3 a.m. I was awake. And it was one of those things where you're like so tired but you're unable to fall asleep. You're like tossing and turning. My husband was asleep. And so I was texting with friends back in America because it was obviously earlier there. And, we were texting and I was texting. I have a group chat that we call the Clubhouse because it's mostly about. So
it's probably like the How Long Gone guys and
yeah, no,
they're
it's
probably
not that,
already in it.
It's my friend Dan Allegretto, and who I don't know if you know. You should have him on. He has
He's amazing. Yeah,
he has a lot of good reality takes. And my friend Alexis Page and my friend Paul Cupo. So it's mostly, I mean, it's about other things too, but mostly we talk about Vanderpump. And then I was texting with them, and Alexis, I think, said, or like one of them said, something about her finally has an opening date. Like it was when it came out that it was going to be like May 27th.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, finally, like it's happening, because it's been like whatever years in the making. Nobody believed it would actually come to fruition. And then Alexa said something like a joke. She was like, oh, we should all go to LA and do like all the restaurants, like the Stations of the Cross. And I was like in a haze, in a jet lag haze. And I was like, wait a second, that's actually a really good idea for an article. What if I pitch this? And it started as a joke, because it's not like necessarily a natural fit. Even though I do write a lot about reality television for the New Yorker, it seemed like a little far-fetched that they would send me to do this like stupid thing. But my editor, God bless her. So right after I talked to them, I was like, okay, I'm like, I'm totally hazy anyway and like can't sleep. I texted her and I was like, so I have this idea. And she was like, LOL assigned. And I was like, okay, wow.
That's amazing.
So that's how it all came about. It was a fever dream. It was like a joke, and then they actually let me do it, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And so
then you went. You opened the article though, talking about Guillermo Zapata, who we talked because I've been covering the first season on my Patreon again and rewatching. And this all started with Guillermo in 1998. Lisa and Ken at this point had owned 20 restaurants, and in 2005 made that deal with Guillermo because it was a much smaller concept, design, all of that. Yeah. And I was reading that beginning, and I was like, this is either a documentary or a full-on movie. Like, can you imagine the halcyon days of like 1998, then meeting, what was that like first meeting with Lisa and Guillermo and the what was like the Roman, because Lisa now is all hopped up on like Nick Lane, he designs everything. Like, was it that same relationship with Guillermo back in like 2005? I mean, then the reality show came in 2013, so that was a little bit of history. And then did you plan on like which place to visit first? Like, did you have a
I had, well, I knew that like the peg of the piece and the way I pitched it to my editor was something about her is finally opening. And this is kind of like the pinnacle moment post-Scandival, sorry, that finally this like revenge restaurant is happening. And it's, nobody believed it would actually open. We've been following it for 2 seasons or whatever, the kind of planning, and it's happening. And I feel like it's going to be a thing. Like, I feel like people will be lining up and it'll be like an event. So I wanted to do that. But in terms of like, so I knew that I wanted to go there first. And in fact, I landed the day before the opening, but I knew there was sort of a soft, like I saw on TikTok that like, Hub House like came and Andy came.
Andy
like
blessed everybody.
In the days before the opening. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to swing by and see if I can spot any like Bravo people. And I came and it was closed. So right after I landed, I just like went straight to Robertson and and I parked to see what was going on. So that was the first place I visited, and it was closed. But I did see, as I note in my piece, I did see Katie. Like,
you said from a distance, like walk, but you didn't. But the piece, did you say anything?
No, she was like pretty far away. Like, she was like way across the street, and I was like, okay, this sighting might be just like enough, And I took a picture of her like a creep. So that was the first thing, and then I was like, and then I. Carrie from SUP,
Carrie O'Donnell,
I was DMing with him, and he said something that I think was right, because he was like, the whole corridor seemed to come to life because of the something about her thing. And so there was kind of something happening in almost every place. And so I kind of like tried to plan my journey according to what was going on at whatever place. So I went to something about her. Nothing was going on because it was the day before the opening. Then that night I went to Schwartz and Sandy's because it was a viewing night, because it was like, Vanderpump was still airing the season. Yeah. And so I went there, and that was a scene because Kyle Chan was emceeing.
Yeah, you said Kyle Chan's like passing out jewelry to the audience.
He was. It was like, and it wasn't a game. It was weird because he was like, "Who's here from out of town?" And this woman is like, "I'm from Ireland," and he's like, "You win a pair of." Gold-plated earrings by Kyle Chan. And so he handed out these little trinkets, but so the place was full. Schwartz was there. Max, the bartender, was actually bartending.
Max, the guy he's the Warren Beatty of Vanderpump Rules.
He is really like Warren Beatty in Shampoo, that guy.
Yes, that's what I was like. Everybody's had a go at Max.
Yeah, I mean, he is. I mean, on his season, on the original season, where he was actually a cast member, but then now with Katie. And so it was interesting because the show was airing on a TV, and it was the reunion, the second part of the reunion, and they were talking about Katie hooking up with Max, and Max was actually there, and everybody was like, sort of, woo! Like,
so dark. Yeah, brother. Yeah. That's Inception all over. I mean, and you said like Schwartz was there, and people were saying like, "Oh my God, he's so awesome. I talked to him about homelessness." And I thought that's such a great line. Like, Schwartz probably gets into the deepest conversations with just bystanders of like, "We talked about a peace accord. It was great." Like, I thought that was very Schwartz.
Schwartz is really, I have to say, Schwartz used to be my favorite because he was the one who was the most quote unquote normal. You know what I mean? He was sort of like a guy you would meet in any, not necessarily on reality TV, right? Like he was like sort of a nice, seemingly intelligent guy. But the last couple seasons, he's really been bugging, like his sort of like hapless vibe has really
Yeah,
been
like,
bugging
oh
me. Like,
shucks.
oh shucks,
Oh
oh, why are you
man.
mad at
Yeah.
me? What did I do? And it's like, come on,
Yeah.
you know what you did, as
Yeah.
Elsie told Heidi, and that historic moment we all remember. But seeing him, and I'd met him briefly, like maybe around season 3 or something at some like Bravo event, but seeing him, he is really so personable. He's so nice, and I wanted to ask him questions, and he was like, no, I feel really bad, but we've had some bad press, referring, I think, to like the Times, the Irene Alexander Times magazine cover, Sandoval cover. So, but he was very sweet about it, and I respected him trying to maintain his boundaries, because as I told him, I said I also have a very hard time maintaining my boundaries. So I identified with his, sort of hard time saying no, like being not
Yeah.
nice, quote unquote, so I went to Schwartz and Sandy's. Then the next day I went and I interviewed people in line at the opening day of Something About Her, because the line was like, as it's been
Was down the
noted in
street.
many places, it was down the street. It was like 3 hours long. So I was like, I'm not going to wait to try a sandwich. And I also I could probably have like talked to the PR and been like,
Yeah.
I'm coming, like, I'll, bring me to the front of the line.
I love that about your piece, though, that it wasn't, and then you didn't attempt to be like Naomi Freier, the food blogger. Like you literally, it was like the vibe, it was the atmosphere, it was
Right,
like kind of everything surrounding.
Because that was kind of, I mean, the food, as we know, we've dined. I know for a fact that you've dined. You were actually, caught on film dining at Tom Tom when it opened. I remember that you were with Lara, and
by the way, Naomi, you realize that was a complete shoot where we showed up at 4:30. I thought it was going to be like extras in a background. It was just us, and they made it look like it was a packed restaurant. And Lisa came in just to be like, "How is your spicy pasta?" And Laura was like, "Spicy."
No, I didn't
know
that.
Because they're so good at that, where it was just me and Laura, like and her friend Tierney, I think, and we were there, and they just did real close shots, and then Lisa did her turnaround. But I thought it was going to be this whole, like, we were all going to be in a packed place. Yeah. They mic'd us up. Like, it was the whole, I had no idea what to expect. I'm probably not even allowed to say that, but it was really weird. And then me and Laura just stayed there, like, for the next 4 hours having, like, drinks and food. It was a blast. But that was the weirdest moment to then see it in the show, because the gang, the gang was on like vacation in Cabo, and that was when they were like, the line's down to mother load. Like, it's packed.
Yeah. So as we know, as people who have dined in these establishments, the food is kind of beside the point. I mean, you might land on something that tastes okay, but it's not really, you don't go there for the culinary experience. You go there to maybe see Jack's, and so I was like, okay, this is like, you go to maybe see Jack's, and you go to maybe talk to other people who have similar feelings, or like maybe opposing feelings about these characters, but like you can have, and people were kind of engaging with each other about the show. And, like there were some girls I met in line who were like, just met this other girl and they were talking, you know what I mean? Like it's like, you have this shared, it's like being part of a club in a weird way. So I think that was, what's just more interesting, because I'm not in any way, I love to eat, but I'm not like a food person really. So I wouldn't be able to say like there was a hint of saffron in the the like Reese Witherspoon sandwich or whatever.
I can really taste the goat cheese in these balls.
in the goat cheese balls. So I did that, and that was fascinating, just because people were there from all over. There was like a woman from Scotland. There was like a a girl from New York, a girl from Atlanta, like, and also just people there was this woman who was like, yeah, I always am. She was like such a huge fan, has been following the gang, since the beginning, and was like, I go to AA meetings here, like every Sunday. It's in like West Hollywood. And then after, I always go and I have brunch at Tom Tom or at Sir. She's had clearly been through some stuff in life and was sort of, it was an interesting perspective. And and she talked about how she's interested in the character psychology because she's all about like kind of doing self-work and all of that. And so that was really fascinating. Then my friend Brett Beats, who also is a huge Vanderpump person, and we, connected over that initially. I think like our first meeting was at Sir, maybe like we went to Sir. We went to Vanderpump Dogs.
Yes.
Because I was like, okay, if I'm going to do the whole universe, I'm going to go to Vanderpump Dogs. I'm going to pass by Kyle Chan, which is across the street on 3rd from Vanderpump Dogs. Brett pointed out the bridal salon where Brittany tried on her wedding dresses in a scene like season 8, I think, or 7.
Yeah. It's littered with moments, like
it's
West
really
Hollywood
littered with moments.
And then Sports and Sandy's is pushing out of that bubble a little bit, which is interesting because I'm like, wow, will we eventually get somebody like opening something up near Dodger Stadium? Like, how far are we going to go
will
into
it go
LA?
further east? What if we have like the Highland Park, Vanderpump, like, it's like we're going to have a Glendale outpost. Like what's
Can you imagine?
What's next?
Well, there's like a whole Mall of America, but it's just Vanderpump themed restaurants, because you also pointed the takeover of Lisa Vanderpump in Vegas. We've got Wolf in Tahoe, the sexiest restaurants.
I know. I can't wait to go to Wolf in Tahoe. Yeah.
It's
where President Trump met Stormy Daniels for the first time.
Wow.
In Tahoe.
So it's
at a golf
been
tournament.
It's been deemed a historical
location. It's an American, it's a hallowed American site.
Yeah. Wow, the vibes must be immaculate there. And then you went across the hill, you went into the Valley, and you went to Jax's Saloon, which, by the way, last night, they're filming the Valley right now. They switched it to Brit Saloon, and they put a tarp over the sign, and they were all wearing Brit Saloon, like Dodie and Zach and all these people.
Like as a joke, kind of, or like for real?
No, I think it was a bit for the show, but like, dude, I mean, Jax doesn't deserve all the sympathy in the world, but like imagine coming out of a mental health facility and then they're like, it's Brit Saloon. Like, I mean, that's like dark shit.
That's so dark. Yeah. So I went, so just to answer, so basically I did, then I went to Sir where DJ James Kennedy was playing. We can't skip over DJ.
Sorry, see you
the
next
place
Tuesday.
Was hopping. Guillermo was there. Peter was there. They were live streaming it on Instagram. Ali Bally was there.
Ali Bally,
and then he played the theme song. Then he was like led the crowd in a chant. Ali.
By the way, I've been there on nights when that kind of stuff happens, and I got to tell you, like I'm like pretty, I don't know, I've lost a lot of hope over the years, but when I hear that Vanderpump Rules theme and DJ James Kennedy plays that or Top Man, I turn into a little kid, and I want Sir to be like Rainforest Cafe, where every 20 minutes they play the theme and they're like air misters spit out like Red Bull and Marlboro Light scents, because I'm like, I think they should sell merchandise, like not even the fancy stuff, like sell like action figures. Like I love stuff like that so much.
No, I know. Yeah, no, because it really is. And one of the takeaways really, and this is not like, I think in any way, like it's not an original point, but it really is a Disneyland for a certain kind of person, because you go and you sort of meet Goofy and you meet Mickey and meet like Moana. I don't know who, it's like.
Well, Moana's Brock, because you describe Brock as it as a burly trainer. Brock, a burly trainer. Those were your words, a burly trainer. I was like, great wording there, burly trainer.
Yeah. So Brock Davies.
I'm Brock.
Yeah. So we did that, and then we went to the Valley, and then we went to Studio City to Jax's Saloon, which was dead empty. Like it was
Yeah.
kind of dark. And I should note that I know it's kind of the luck of the draw. Like I feel if it was a night when there was a viewing, if I had gone, because I believe that when the show was on still, they also had viewings
Yeah.
of the Valley and maybe even Vanderpump at Jax's. And so I'm sure if it was a night like that, then there would have been more people. But being that it wasn't, it was just a regular old Thursday night in Studio City, it was really echoing. It was echoing, which
And
was interesting in a way.
well,
And
people
they
don't
were
realize there's
playing
like
like
picnic,
the
there's
hits of the
picnic
new wave.
tables.
There's
Yeah,
picnic.
you said weren't they playing the Smiths?
They were playing the Smiths, yeah.
Can you imagine Jax is like, we only play the Smiths here. We play Susie and the Banshees. We got to have them. We New Order would be great here.
No,
Yeah.
it was clear. It was really literally that. Like it was great. I always enjoy that. But I was like, this is a weird vibe. Like this doesn't seem to fit with what's going
Yeah.
on. So it was kind of depressing, but kind of interesting. And we had Mima's beer cheese, which actually I have to say was surprisingly, it was tangy. I expected worse.
Yeah. Well, I have a theory that they're getting like the Trader Joe's pub cheese, and like because I've had that Mama's beer cheese too, and I was like, this kind of tastes like the pub cheese from Trader Joe's. And they put it on this. I don't know if they did it for you. This big plank, like a really big plank, and they put the celery like in like these kind of diagonal like patterns or like, and I was like, wow. And the only time I've been to Jackson's Saloon was for like the second episode of the Valley watch party, like you were talking about. And I will say, I mean, it wasn't like packed out for me. Every Vanderpump event in the past that I've gone to, I always think it's going to be like the Grateful Dead's in town. Like, oh my God, it's going to be lines forever. Like people are going to be camped out. And it's never been like that. Never. So I go to this and it's like pretty empty at first. I got there early and people were watching Vanderpump Rules, and then the Valley started and everybody started showing up. And we already knew Jax and Brittany at this point weren't doing well, but they showed up together, but they were like cordial with each other, but you could tell, and they sat them in the middle, like we were watching them like circus animals
on a throne.
And Jax watching himself is a trip. He really enjoys watching himself, or from what I've seen. And he was really like up that night. He was like, hey, he was like bussing, like I got a bus.
Glad handing.
Oh yeah, kissing babies, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting this is before the Valley, like really everybody started really liking it. And it was like, wow, you guys have been doing this for so long and you have to show up to these events and show your face, even when this relationship, like very dark. Michelle Lally was there, but Jesse wasn't. And I was like, man, all of this based around your real lives, and they're just as dark as they were in 2013.
Yeah.
But you got all smiles on your faces. You're doing the razzle dazzle. And there's something really, but like you said, there's something so cold and interesting about it.
Yeah, because it really does show, because, I do think that when the difference between Vanderpump beginning and the Valley beginning is that it's just a different stage of life, right? So it's like, Stassi was like, what was she, like 23? She was
24, yeah. She turned 24 at the Vegas episode and the
with
first
a chunky
season.
sweater. Yeah. She was super young. Most of them were also, Jax was older and some of them were somewhat older, but like generally they were in their 20s for the most part. And they were kind of starting out and they had hopes and dreams and they didn't know, anything could happen. Like, Dodie could have like married a future presidential candidate. Like Schwartz could have like suddenly been an actor in an Oscar winning movie. Like, no, you don't know when you're that young. And so, and you can get fucked up and it doesn't really matter as much. And you can like party all day and you can like whatever, like cheat and all of that stuff. And it all kind of comes out in the watch for a few years at least. But then it gets, it gets darker. And with the Valley, there's, I have to once again quote my daughter. I begged her to watch the Valley with me. And she was like, okay. We watched the first episode and she like knew Jax and Kristen and stuff. And she was like, no, I can't watch it. It's too depressing. And I was like, why? Like, what? I mean, I understand, but like, what do you mean? And she was like, it's like now it's like it's not just that they're bad people, they're also just bad parents. And like you see the cycle sort of continue, which I
Oh,
totally agreed with. I thought that was very like astute because yeah, there was a scene early on. I think it might have been the first or second episode of The Valley where you see young Cruz in the pool or something, and he's wearing like floaties. He's not going to drown, but like they keep panning over to him, and he keeps like
he's by himself.
he's by himself. He's sputtering. He's like going under. He's not going under. He was. I'm sure. I'm sure he was safe. But like, you know what I mean? It's basically sort of like.
Yeah.
And I'm sure. Jax. I don't know what kind of father he is. Brittany is probably. She's loving and stuff. But like, it's. I totally and like Jesse and Michelle and their daughter. Like, how fucked up is this? And so I could totally see her point. And that's the thing. When you're older, either you have children or if you don't have children, you yourself are kind of like your body's failing and things that used to be sort of fun and games aren't really anymore. So I think, that's
Yeah.
just
I mean,
darker.
a big like a storyline this season was just should Brittany be drinking with her stomach problems? Like,
Right.
you've got really bad stomach issues. You
Yeah.
should be in there cooking in the kitchen instead of sick in the bedroom. And like, Jax, what you talking about? Like, it was
Right.
so dark how he would talk to her, and he even knew the cameras were on him. And I was like,
He threw her under the bus with that. He really threw her under the bus because, yeah. Although, we really don't know what happens. I mean, there were a few times where it was clear. Everybody was like, she wasn't drinking, like when they went on the boat, when they went to Tahoe. Where did they go for that horrible weekend? The baby
Oh, I think
moon.
it was Tahoe when Janet was scared that Zach was going to show up because of the
Yes.
location tag on Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. And so all the girls were like, she wasn't drinking. And Chas was like, you drink, and then you're surprised that you get sick. And it's like, who knows who's right? I mean, obviously you shouldn't have shamed her like that, but maybe she shouldn't be drinking,
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, it will be curious to see Britney's awakening,
yeah.
like the waiting to exhale of Britney, it's going to be interesting to see that. There's like been rumors about like her dating. And I just do wonder, I mean, Jax, I don't know what to believe anymore because Jax has had like his version of Rocket Man is just lying every season. Like that's his hit. Like, it's like, oh my God, Jackson's doing Rocket Man again. Like you're like so excited to see it, even though you've heard it, you've seen everything. But sometimes you'll still get in there and go, well, could this be the truth? Could he have had a complete mental breakdown where he was forced to go into a mental health facility? Could this be true? Or is this another pivot to actually get people on board with sympathy and empathy?
Or just to create a plot point,
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To even not even sympathy, but even, just like, when he like cheated with like Faith or something, it was like a great plot point. Like with the geriatric, with the dying woman,
in the room while they had
sex. I mean, what could be better? Seriously. And you do have to wonder, like, is he aware of that as he's doing? I mean, obviously he has very poor impulse control and is like a cheater and a horn dog and all of that. But also, like, are you thinking plot points, my man? Like, are you like,
well, if you're on reality television so much, that's why that New York Times article was so fascinating with Sandoval, because he admitted that he thinks of his life as a reality show. So he thinks of his life, everything he does, he thinks about it in three ways: doing the actual scene, having to do a talking head about it, and then having people watch it and that kind of blowback or positive response. So they said he would just kind of like the whole time, even though the cameras weren't rolling, act like he was on reality television. And I thought, what an interesting thing. But how would you not become that way after a decade plus of doing this?
Of course, it's anyone. I think it would happen to anyone. It's just because it's just like it's like when you go in to do your job, when you go in, when you podcast, what you have to say an intro and you interview in a certain way and you edit it and you post it and, you do all of the things, you secure guests. When I go into the office, at the magazine, or when I sit down to write, or when I interview someone for a piece, Like there are certain things that you have to do for work, and you have certain strategies that you're aware of, that you're making use of. And so if your job is to be on reality television, of course you will think, when you're like, living your life, how will this look? For instance,
Yeah.
or how will I explain this? How will I talk about this? Like, what is the spin I'm going to put on my impulses, on my
baser desires,
my
all
baser
of this.
desires, all of those things. So it makes complete sense. But I would also think that, like, God, what a horrible way to live, It's like, I think all of us, to a certain extent, because we live in a kind of social media world, right? And most of us, some people are not on social media. Most people I know are, to a certain extent, at least. And so and some people that we know, but even us, when you do something, you're like, when I write something and I'm like, oh, when this article comes out, I'm going to post it and I hope people like it, because I think it's like a funny thing, or a thing I haven't done before, or like they'll be like impressed with me, or, whatever the case. Or when you think you look good in a picture and you post it and you're like, oh, I hope everyone will think I look thinner or something, like whatever it is. Or like, oh, they'll be impressed that I was invited to be at this event, or that I'm interviewing this person. So to a certain extent, there is something performative about our lives, even if we're not on reality TV. But of course, when you're someone like Sandoval or Jax or whoever has been on reality TV for such a long time, their entire lives become that. And that's like, that is a mental institution ready, like recipe.
I've started to look at the show as just actually like a haunted house where they're shackled to it for the rest of their lives. It's like the Islanders on Lost, like they can't escape the island. As much as they try, the island keeps bringing them back. They'll be in each other's life forever. And like I always say, you're not supposed to be friends with the bartenders and barbacks you met in your 20s. Like it's a certain, like it's not a natural. So we're already like fully with the laws of science we're messing with completely. And I really quickly, I know I have a couple minutes, but I've still never been to something about her to eat, because
I was going to ask you.
Well, like I love Ariana and Katie so much and I support them and all of that. But I think this year has been so tough for me personally. I kind of got disillusioned in what you were saying. Like I used to like, oh, it's funny if I go in the Sur Alley and take a photo and that'll make me laugh. And I know people will make that. It's like cheesy and dad jokey. And I haven't had that in me this year. Like I haven't had that kind of joy in me. And I used to do these silly things out of joy. And and I'm like, oh, and then I was like, is that a younger man's game? Maybe it's a younger man's game to do that kind of silly stuff.
I understand what you're saying. I have to say that I was worried because I think it's a combination. There is whatever it is that's going along, that's happening in our lives, and how we feel about the world and things being darker or lighter for us. But I think also post Scandival, we were like, is there anything to live for anymore? Because it really reached the pinnacle, and you were like, this will, never happen again. This confluence, this incredible confluence of things. And so, and then the season after that was a letdown. How could it not have been? I do think that the Valley is kind of like given me a will to live again in a way. Because first of all, it's just good to have our old friends back. It's good to have Jax back and Brittany and Dodie.
No, it's so like wonderful. Going back to school after a really long summer vacation. You get to see everybody's new haircuts.
It just feels like there's still going to be a new tomorrow. They can still, those old dogs still can do the same tricks.
There's some fight in those old dogs still.
Yeah, and that gives me hope for myself, honestly, because I'm like, okay, like what you're saying about a young man's game. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna, and I think that's the way I ended the article too. It's like, I'm growing old with these people.
Yes, that's what, because you brought it up at the beginning.
Isn't that a blessing? Because I tweeted in like 2017, I want to grow old with a Vanderpump gang. Like, don't ever leave me. Like, let's have parallel lives forever that I can watch and like partake in to a certain extent. And if there is something so, of course it's their job, but there is something so generous, I think, in kind of like there's, I'm thankful for it, because like I often say with this group chat, especially that I was mentioning, it's like, where would we be without Bravo? What would we think about? What would we talk about?
Well,
Like, what would we have to look forward to?
If you're lucky to live on this earth 100 years, we usually only get as much as 100 years, if that. How blessed are we to have it during the time of Bravo's heyday? So that's really exciting. My dad said last night, we're so blessed. And Naomi, I'm blessed to have you here today. Like, I love that I almost teared up on Naomi's last thing of like, I am gonna go old. I was like, that gives me hope. And that's what we need right now. You guys, Naomi's article, I'm gonna put that on there, but everything that she writes, you got to read immediately, but also go subscribe to that Critics at Large podcast. I'm telling you, you are going to love it. And I know this probably doesn't matter to her, but make sure you rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
No, it really matters, actually. It really matters.
Yeah, because it does help with placement and it helps with all that. And we want people to know about this. So
yeah.
But no, really, thank you. I've been looking forward to this for the last week, so I appreciate it.
Me too. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me, Ryan.
Thank you.